Hey there, guys. Thanks for joining us today on Cinema Recap. And it looks like we're going to be checking out some historical drama film called Men of Honor. Spoilers ahead. We open the film with some news footage explaining that an American nuclear warhead has been recently lost at sea. But don't fear, the American Navy's onto it, sending out an elite team of divers.
You are a damn deserter.
To search for and recover the bomb. Well, thank God for that. Watching the news broadcast as a man we'll come to know as Master Chief Leslie Billy Sunday, although he's not a Master Chief anymore. Sunday's in chains, but he claims that if he was on that ship, he'd find that nuclear warhead no problem. The two military policemen make sure to point out that Sunday went AWOL, so he's not a Master Chief or even a diver anymore.
Master Chief.
Sunday's watching the news broadcast when it cuts to a live feed on a warship, and you know what that means? Flashback time. We cut back to 1943. It's Kentucky, America, and we're following a young boy named Carl Brashear as he's running through the fields and dives into the lake. He swims around a bit, showing us that he's born to the water like a fish or Aquaman. The next day, his mother hounds him to get ready for school, but he sees his father work in the field by himself and wants to help. His father isn't having any of it. He tells Carl to go to school, work hard, and become a better man than he is. Basically, he's dropping some serious theme chat into the movie here, that being the importance of never giving up and all that good stuff. Carl listens to his father, but refuses to budge. He's gonna help out whether his dad wants him to or not. Carl's stubborn and eventually gets his way, skipping school and helping his dad to plow the fields.
I'm not going to school, Daddy.
Now cut forward another 5 years, and Carl is a man, or at the very least a burly-looking teen. He's plowing the fields by himself until his mother calls him in. It's time to leave. But leave where? The Navy. The next scene has Carl lining up to enlist in and join the U.S. Navy. Again, his father makes sure to give him a never give up talking to, which Carl takes in stride, and we get the sense that he's going to be coming back to this speech a lot in his life.
I'll come back.
This is 1948, meaning that segregation and racism still exists in the Army. As an African-American man, the most Carl can hope for is to work in the kitchens.
Big future.
But one day, he and his fellow kitchen hands are up on deck, watching all the white men dive over the edge and swim. Carl wants to join in, but he can't because of the color of his skin. But this is Carl Brashear, and he makes a habit of doing what he shouldn't. He walks the deck alone, and then dives off the edge to join the others. Oh, this causes an immediate outroar among the white men, and the commander sent a swimmer in to fetch him. But Carl outswims him with ease, proving that he's probably the best swimmer on the whole damn ship. Naturally, he's reprimanded and thrown in the brig for it, but a brief chat with his commanding officer, and Carl is promoted.
You have got the balls to back it up.
To a search and rescue swimmer. The action kicks off the next day when a chopper crashes into the water right by that ship that Carl's on. By the time he gets to the deck, there's already a diver in after the chopper. And wouldn't you know it, it's Master Chief Sunday. He pulls one of the pilots back onto deck, and Carl watches him in a state of idolization.
Complete the diving operation.
But things take a nasty turn when an accident sees a crew member pulled underwater by some rigging. Sunday's up and about to dive over the edge without any equipment, but the captain of the ship, Captain Hartigan, orders him to stand down as it's too dangerous. Well, do you think Sunday listens? Hell no. He dives in with no equipment, much to the bewilderment of Carl and the rest of the crew. Unfortunately for Sunday, this extremely dangerous act left his lungs scarred, which means that he can never dive again, otherwise he'll die. It's news that breaks him.
Any increased pressure at all will kill you.
And seeing as this is just a flashback, we know it's only going to get worse. Meanwhile, the incident with the diver has affected Carl greatly. He knows now what he was put on this planet to do, and that's to become a master diver of the U.S. Navy. He approaches his commanding officer, asking if he'll sponsor him to attend training, but his commander reminds him that he's black, and there's no way that he'll be accepted. Carl pushes him, even begs, and the commanding officer relents. Although again, he tells him that the odds of him being accepted are next to impossible. Not that Carl seems to mind. We cut forward 2 whole years, and Carl has finally been accepted to the Naval Diving Academy. He's the first black man to ever been enrolled, and what should be a glorious occasion for all is heavily tainted by extreme racism of that time. He arrives at the camp on time, but they refuse to let him even through the front doors. Sunday is the head instructor of the academy, and exits about the same time that Carl arrives. They have a little chat, and Sunday tells Carl that he's better off going home, because there's no chance he's coming in.
Gonna be a hot one today.
Carl refuses, and thus spends the entire day standing outside the academy waiting to be let in. Eventually, Sunday returns, and after asking again if Carl could just go home already, he relents and lets him in. Training gets off to a bad start for Carl. He joins the rest of his bunkmates in their cabin, but right away they protest Carl's inclusion. Sunday tells them all that this is the way the world is heading, and they all need to get used to it, but they're not having it. Every single trainee, except for one, walks out and refuses to share the cabin with Carl. That night too,
Rise and shine, Cookie.
Sunday pulls Carl out of bed and begins to torture him. He passes it off as training, but take a look and decide for yourself what he's doing. It's basically routine torture, but Carl sticks it out and takes it because, as his dad told him, he isn't going to give up. Training continues to be a struggle for Carl. On the first day, his only friend is kicked out for not being good enough.
You're out of my program.
On the second day, Carl is the first to assemble his equipment, but rather than getting praise, he's treated with scorn. The only thing that Carl isn't good at is tests. Having left school to help his father work the land, Carl never finished, and it shows. It gets so bad that he's told flat out if he fails one more test, he's out of the academy. But this is Carl Brashear, and he doesn't give up so easily. He heads to the nearest town and approaches the librarian. He even brings her flowers as a means to soften her up before asking if she'll help teach him.
What's the hitch?
She tells him no, but then indicates to another, younger, hotter librarian named Joe, who maybe he can give a try. Carl does just that, and wouldn't you know it? Nope, she's not interested in helping him either.
I can't help you.
Her father was in the Navy and she knows the type, and she doesn't trust Carl to stick by his word. But he promises Joe that she can trust him, that he will give it his all. Eventually, she relents and agrees to help, but on one condition, that as soon as he proves her correct and falls through on their agreement, she's out. Some more time passes and Carl is coming up in his class. Today's a training exercise in which two divers are sent into a sunken ship so as to patch it up underwater. It should be simple enough, but one small error sees the ship tumble from its foundations and begin to sink even further into the ocean. Worse, this sudden movement has trapped one of the divers. Sunday's screaming for them to get out of there, but the diver's oxygen tubing is stuck and he needs to replace it while underwater, while the ship is sinking. Back on land, Carl's already suited up to dive in, and with no choice, Sunday sends him in to help.
Change him out now.
It's a dangerous situation. The ship continues to sink. The other diver, the one who wasn't trapped, freaks out and flees, leaving Carl and the trapped diver to die. But Carl doesn't give up. He stays put, keeps calm, and manages to reattach the diver's breathing tube and help him to shore. Now, this should be a moment of celebration, but the racism of this era really shows. In a true act of cowardice, Sunday decides to award a Medal of Bravery to the diver who fled, rather than giving it to a black man.
Post.
Carl is forced to stand by and watch as his medal, his achievements, are being given to a coward. And things only get worse for Carl. A short phone call home and he finds out that his father has passed out. Carl is distraught, and you can just see him itching to do something about it. He calls up Joe and asks her to meet him, but before she arrives, Sunday's wife, Gwen, turns up. She and Sunday have been fighting, and she's looking to piss him off. In order to do this, she coaxes Carl to join her at the bar,
So what you gonna do about it?
where only white men are allowed. This doesn't go down too well. The other soldiers are on her and Carl to get the hell out of the bar. But then Sunday turns up. He's all drunk, and after abusing his wife a little bit, he accosts Carl and accuses him of thinking that he's better than everyone. Angry over the death of his father, Carl takes the bait, says that he is in fact better than everyone. And well, Sunday isn't gonna stand for that. They have themselves a little competition to see who can hold their breath the longest, right there in the bar. And if Carl loses, he agrees to leave the academy for good.
Deal.
But this is Carl, and he ain't losing. The competition gets underway, with Joe turning up just in time to see it. But the minutes drag on and we see Sunday begin to struggle. Blood's pouring from his nose, and the other soldiers have no choice but to stop the count. Carl has won, but still, the bad news keeps coming. Back at the academy, Sunday is called up to meet with his even more racist commander, Pappy, who wants to know what Sunday's doing about kicking Carl from the program. Sunday tells Pappy that Carl's going to graduate tomorrow, as all he has to do is pass that final test, which he's bound to do.
He's gonna pass.
There's nothing they can do to stop him now, but Pappy isn't having it and tells Sunday that no matter what, Carl cannot pass. Sunday goes to see Carl and tells him not to turn up for the final test tomorrow because he isn't gonna pass him. Carl, though, well, he refuses to listen, and the two men have it out. But there's also a level of respect there, as Sunday, despite how much he wants to hate Carl, also realizes that he's a good diver and a better person. But still, he can't pass him. The next day is the big test, and to no one's real surprise, Carl turns up. Pappy watches from his office, and Sunday sees him, and knows that he has to do whatever he can to try and stop him. So, he does. The test requires the divers to assemble some piping underwater. Carl dives down and calls for his equipment to be lowered.
Requesting my tool bag.
So Sunday has the bag cut open and dropped down, sending the equipment to spread all over the ocean floor. What should only take a few hours leads into the night as Carl refuses to surface without finishing. 9 hours later, and the rest of the divers have finished up and watched on in a state of shock. Pappy calls Sunday and demands that Sunday leave him in the water, effectively killing him. But by now, the other soldiers have seen the determination and grit of Carl and won't have it. They encourage Carl to finish, and when he calls to be pulled up, they're only too happy to help. And to everyone's shock, except for us viewers, Carl manages to assemble the piping perfectly. He passed that test and the academy, making him the first African-American diver in U.S. history. Good work, Carl.
Perfect assembly.
It's a few years later now, New Year's Eve, and Carl rushes to a party to meet up with his wife, Jo. There, he tells her that he's finally been offered a job. She's beyond ecstatic, but then he tells her that he's turning down that job. The job is for a standby diver, which isn't good enough for Carl, as he wants to be a full-time diver or nothing. This good news, bad news is softened when Jo reveals that she is in fact pregnant. Carl lifts her up, spins her about, and the two celebrate the only way they know how.
We're gonna have a baby.
Meanwhile, Sunday's at a New Year's party of his own with his wife, where he bumps into Captain Hartigan. That's the same guy from earlier, who ordered Sunday not to dive in after the drowning men. Sunday blames Hartigan for the downward trajectory of his career, and seeing as he's a little sauced, picks a fight. It then looks like Sunday's gonna be the bigger man and walk away, but no, not a chance. He snaps and punches the captain in the face. This sees his rank reduced once again, a common theme in Sunday's life. We cut forward a few more years now and we're back to the present, on that ship where Carl is getting ready to dive into the water in search of a lost nuclear warhead.
Blue Diver, this is the captain.
Carl has come a long way since we were last with him, and his commanding officer talks to him with respect and honor. Really, we just get to see that Carl is good at what he does. Things go awry when a Russian submarine suddenly turns up out of nowhere. Worse, that it's headed right for where Carl is. He moves to get out of the way, but his oxygen tubing gets tangled up in the sub. It drags him through the ocean, tosses him about, and for a moment, it looks like this might be it for Carl. But of course, it isn't. He wakes up a moment later and informs everyone that he's fine.
He's there.
And what's more, he just happened to land right by that nuclear warhead they were searching for. Talk about your lucky breaks. But it's not all nuclear warheads and celebrations. Back on deck, a small mishap turns into a bigger one. Some rigging comes loose and Carl the hero pushes a sailor out of harm's way, only to be caught up in it himself. An anchor is dragged across the deck and takes out Carl's leg, severing it below the knee and nearly taking it clean off. His diving days appear to be done. In the hospital now, and Carl is at a loss for what to do. His wife Jo seems happy enough about it, convinced that maybe now he can take it easy and spend more time with the kids. But all Carl wants is to become a diving master chief, and he'll do it, even if it kills him. That's when Carl comes up with an idea. He enlists to have his leg cut off and replaced with a prosthetic, one that'll allow him to dive. It's been done with aviation pilots, so why not divers? It might seem like a good enough idea, but that rascal Captain Hartigan's back. He's in charge now, and he informs Carl that there's no way this is gonna happen. Zero chance.
It's just not possible.
Clearly, he hasn't met Carl. Carl manages to convince the Naval Board to give him 1 month of training with the prosthetic. If they do that, he'll prove to him that he is ready. Unfortunately, as soon as he starts to train, Sunday arrives and tells him that his test is being moved up to 1 week from now.
He said I had 4 weeks.
Nowhere near enough time to get ready, but then Sunday tells him that he can apply to the Pentagon and ask them directly. With Sunday's help, they say yes. The next month sees Sunday and Carl locked in training as Sunday pushes Carl to be where he needs to be if he's going to have any chance of being reinstated as a diver. When the day of the hearing arrives, it looks like Carl might just have a chance, but then Captain Hartigan steps up again. He reveals to Carl a new style of diving suit, one that is bigger and heavier than usual.
Yes, sir, I could.
As part of naval training, all recruits must be able to take 12 steps on dry land while wearing the new suit. It weighs a ton, hard enough for a man with 2 legs. Even Sunday's warning Carl against doing it. fearing that this might just break him. But Carl doesn't give up. He never has before. He suits up, and then, through sheer force of will and the magic of film editing, he manages to walk the full 12 steps. The courtroom erupts with applause, and even Captain Hartigan, the villain, can't help but smile. With no choice, he agrees to re-enlist Carl into the Navy. Our film ends with a title crawl, informing us that it's 1968 and Carl Brashear became the first amputee in U.S. Navy history to return to full active duty. He eventually made rank of Master Chief and served another 9 years before retirement. His journey was a true testament to never giving up, a message that was instilled in Carl from an early age. Thanks for chilling with us on the recap of Men of Honor, produced by Fox 2000 Pictures and released in 2000, directed by George Tillerman Jr., starring Cuba Gooding Jr., Robert De Niro, and Charlize Theron. This movie is inspiration on steroids. What moment inspired you the most? Why don't you let us know with that hashtag cinema recap in the comments? As always, till next time.